Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. What we're going to do today is go through the platform. We've got some business to take care of up front. What I hope to do today is to tell you a little bit about what brought about PsychAssist, some of the philosophy behind it, as well as just get into the platform and bump around a little bit. I can't wait to show you some of the features, how I think about how our process goes, and how workflow and context means just about everything. And so as we get here started, we're going to spend just probably 5 or 6 minutes getting aligned. We're going to talk about workflow and its importance. We're going to go through the product roadmap and what to expect here moving forward. We have a dedicated customer experience team, so I want to spend a little bit of time chatting about that. And of course, we'll go through what to expect if you choose to sign up after our demo today, because we go live today. What I think is really important is all too often we think about the report as the big problem. We always talk about how long it takes. We always talk about how tedious it is to get into the platform, to get into reports, how much extra time we spend, and how oftentimes we're not really compensated for that. But I don't think that reports are really the problem. I think workflow management is an issue. And so PsychAssist is built upon building context through specific workflows and sprinkling in a layer or this extra, several layers rather, of context. And as we go through our presentation today, what we're going to do is we're going to, oh, so sorry. Looks like part of the screen is an issue. So let me get that going. All right, let me know if that's any better, Angie. So sorry. And so as we go through our presentation today, what we're going to do is we're going to chat a little bit about how we get this workflow and the context and this hierarchy of context really into the platform in a way that produces a report as an aggregate of all of the work that we do up until that point. I really think that the report should be writing itself along the way, and that is what PsychAssist was built for. When we think about what our brains do in assessment, this is a quick flow chart of all of the things that we're doing sort of in the background. Half the time we don't even know that we're doing it. We're taking all of this information. We're taking the patient's demographic information. We're taking the data, of course. We're taking observations. We're taking all of this information. And what we're doing is we're aggregating that into a document at the end. And the goal through PsychAssist is to do as much of this in the background. And if PsychAssist was built right, which I do believe it was, this should happen without you even knowing. Excuse me. And so when we think about all of the sources of data, whether they are the sessions you're having, we can transcribe those and turn those into portions of your data or portions of your report. When we think about our behavioral observations, we think about those at the global and local level. We think about our core data, and all of this functions in a way to create a document that is focused on patient outcomes only. The goal is to create these documents that are the end of our process as a clinician, but really the beginning of a process for a patient. And so if we can give them something that then ensures or at least encourages wonderful care afterwards with really specific and strategic interventions, this document is really where they take that and move forward. And if we can do that along the way through our workflow and through all these layers of context, I think that we put them in a better spot. And of course, if we can do that with as minimal friction as possible, then I think that we're doing everyone a favor. So every system has a bunch of component parts. And when we think about a robust system, something that takes into consideration all of the various pieces of context, individual parts of that are just as equally as important. So one of the things, and I'll show you this in the demo here in just a moment, is a function, a feature rather, that we have in the platform. And it is how we can really get down and dirty with the specifics of a patient. There's a process that we go through just before we generate this first draft of your report for a patient, and we refer to it as the report wizard. And what this does is it takes this inverted pyramid, and we have all of the data available to us, and we whittle it down into this report. And this report wizard, again, you'll see this here momentarily, is a way for us to get the very specific nuances that are going to best serve that client. But it's all done in your voice. It's all done with your preferences. It's all done in your style. And it's all done giving a report that you feel adequate putting your name on. Many people will ask, hey, Chris, PsychAssist, this is cool, but can you show me a report? And I'm happy to do so. But my immediate reaction, and oftentimes I'll fire this back, is, why don't you just take a look at the last one you wrote? If you're happy with that, that's what this platform can produce. And so the layers of context, we have organizational things, we have clinician things, we have workflow things, and we have patient layers of context. This report wizard is where we put all of that together. And workflow is linear. It's a very linear process. When we think about a patient's lifespan, when they come through our clinics or they come through our organizations, most patients, even regardless of the service you're providing or the assessment you're providing, follow a pretty linear path. And if we can get a platform such as PsychAssist to do much of this automation for these workflows, then we can really set ourselves up as clinicians to have less cognitive load as it goes into the documentation of this. Furthermore, providing much more nuanced information for our patients, synthesized and integrated information that then serves them after they leave our clinics. But this idea of workflow is really the backbone of what PsychAssist is about. I think all of us have one or two, maybe several more specific services that we provide as an assessment psychologist. Here at my clinic, of course, we do a lot of ADHD assessments for children, for adults, and every patient gets a basic workflow. We know that most patients that are going to come in for an ADHD evaluation, whether they be kids or adults, they're going to be receiving much of the same battery. It's going to be much of the same time frame. We know the costs are generally the same. And of course, we can critique those or we can configure those per patient. However, there is this backbone that exists, and it is very, very linear. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through the platform, and I'd like to show you a few things about that. One thing that I really think is important, just as a human, but certainly as a founder of PsychAssist, is transparency is everything. We have to trust the products that we're using. We have to understand how they work in the background. We have to understand what to expect and what these platforms are being built into the future. And so as a quick rundown, these are some things that we can expect here moving forward. Just give me 1 second. So here we are. We have compliance. So compliance is a big issue that we have to think about. When we think about security and we think about HIPAA and we think about all of these things that make sure we're keeping our patients' information safe, we think about these different layers of security. So SOC 1 is one space in time that you meet certain criteria. This is bank level encryption. This is all the things that are currently available through PsychAssist. SOC 2 is what we hope to achieve here very quickly. So SOC 2 is demonstrating that you have the ability to maintain that level of security over a 6-month period. And so since it hasn't been 6 months yet, we are still in the process of showing that we are able to create that layer of security and maintain that. Towards the end of this year, we're going to be launching a mobile app so you can access this information from your phone, from a tablet, so you don't have to carry around a laptop to do all of this work for you. Also, we have some scribe abilities within the platform. And so you can use the scribe or the microphone in one of your mobile devices to do that. And we're also working with integrating billing. And that is not just billing for patients, but that is also submitting claims to all of the insurance providers if that's something that you have available in your practice. But that will be an integration that we can expect by the end of the year. As we move forward into 2026, it starts to get a little wild, and I get really excited about some of the capabilities that we're going to have available to us then. We're going to have organization-wide analytics. We're going to have system-wide analytics where we can identify lots of different pieces of information that we can then reflect back to our users that then just give them more information to make more sound decisions. And this is not only about the measures being used or the data being collected. It's about how do we configure our workflows? How do we configure our practice even to be robust, efficient, but first and foremost, how do we take care of our patients long-term? And all information we can get around that, we'll be passing that along to our users. I mentioned that we have a customer experience team. Here, as we launch today, the first users in this cohort 0, we're going to have a dedicated member of this team available to you. And this assists with everything from onboarding. We're going to set up the platform for you. We're going to then configure and set up your workflows. We have a ton of forms available in PsychAssist, from general service forms for your practice all the way down to open source forms that we can send patients, and very specific diagnostic questionnaires that we can send to patients as well. The team will set all of that up for you. If you want to use your own forms, that's wonderful. We're happy to do that for you. But we also have this very robust library that you can take a peek at as well. And so after all of that is done, the system is going to be fully operational. Many people are asking, hey, Chris, how long is this going to take for us to get going? And some people are worried that it's going to take a lot because it's a robust system. And generally speaking, from the second we start saying, yes, let's do this thing, and we sign the contracts and do all the things, we got about a 3 to 5 day period. And that is 3 to 5 days you're using this for your first patient. So we can expect some very rapid implementation of the program. And this includes lots of meeting, if we can, to really get the nuance of your practice, because your practice is part of that hierarchy of context. So cohort 0, when we think about the first set of users here as we launch today, we're looking for a specific demographic, so to speak. We want people who have a lot of work with the neurodevelopmental disorders, and given the flavor of the chapter that we're in our world, that seems to be many of us. And we'll service both pediatric and adult populations, both with either a clinical or a neuropsych specialty. This first cohort is going to be 10 people and a white glove experience from top to bottom. The second you reach out to me and say, hey, Chris, this sounds interesting, let's chat. We have this chat and you want to move forward, the customer experience team takes it on from there. And as a part of that, this first cohort is going to have direct access as an advisory group, which means that I will be available, our office hours every week at a specified time. There will be in-platform assistance, so you could ask directly through the platform if you have any questions or have any nuance that you need help working out. But furthermore, we're available all day between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. And so within that, you can expect a response within 40 minutes at the most. And what we want is a lot of feedback. We want a tremendous amount of information about you, because as we can configure your workflow, your organizational settings, it only makes a better product for you. Pricing is a big thing, and I've had a lot of comments about the pricing. Currently, the pricing is $2,000 a month, and that is steep. We understand that. And PsychAssist isn't for everyone. If you only have a few clients a month, maybe that you're doing for assessment, there may be some other tools out there for you. But for those practices that do find themselves overwhelmed or inundated with referrals, they have a backlog, maybe they have 6 to 8 months for patients to get in, this feels like a very good platform for those individuals, because we can increase the efficiency, we can reduce the cognitive and administrative burden, and furthermore, we can set this platform up to really take care of many, many things in the background, sending forms, etc. I'll be able to show you all of this in just a moment after I'm through rambling through these things. And we're set, although we're opening up today, the first patient will run through PsychAssist on June 1. So we have some time to get things set up for people. The last thing that I want to touch upon here before we get into the demo is a question about who owns the data. Well, all PsychAssist users own their data. It is theirs. And although we may use some data, it's going to be non-PHI data that PsychAssist as a system uses. And this is to then implement, as I mentioned, in Q1 of 2026. So we will be able to communicate to our users. Most clinicians who are rendering a diagnosis of inattentive or hyperactive, impulsive ADHD, they may oftentimes use these measures. Turns out that you don't. Is that something that you're interested in? Down the road, we're looking at integrating with some of the publishers and some of these third-party integrations. And so, yes, you do own your data. Absolutely. You can have it anytime and download all the CSVs of all the information. But what we're doing is we're creating this very robust data set, and it's only to service clinicians to make more robust decisions. All right, so we're getting ready to jump into the demo. I'm going to have to switch a few screens around here. But in this demo, we're going to really touch upon how PsychAssist goes through context training. We're going to talk about how you deliver these services and what batteries do you choose. We're going to talk about all of the stakeholders involved in a patient, whether it's them or any of the other individuals who may benefit from this information. Because PsychAssist is a deeply intelligent and robust platform, we're going to look at session management and, of course, the report generation. But it's important to note here before we jump in that PsychAssist users are clinicians, and there is a patient portal associated for every patient that goes through the platform. And this is all branded very differently. No patient will ever see PsychAssist on anything that's done through the platform. It'll say Psych Access. So we can rest assured that if we have something and maybe it sends an email and it says PsychAssist and a patient is starting to do some background information or some investigation, we don't have to worry about anything. We have to just put them into Psych Access. They get all their forms, they can upload documents, they can communicate to you through that. All right, so bear with me for one moment. What we're going to do now is we're going to take a peek at building some context. And so this is part of the onboarding process. And of course, all of our users here in the beginning will have that available to them. We'll do that for them rather. And what we're going to do here is just start to create some organizational context. What we do is we take some of this information so sorry, I have so many open tabs. We take some of this information about the clinic. We have our NPIs. We ask information about what potential service you're using currently so we can help transition you over from that if that's what you choose to do. We put in information here because this is part of your branding and many people will have their URLs, etc. on their documentation. So we want to make sure that we have that information. This is all part of the organizational context. Also, we have the ability to add your logo, some of your imagery, some of these things, so it stays with your practice branding. After we do this, we get then into tell us about you, what you are, because you are that next layer of the context. And so we have to have this information here, your own individual MPI, and this is for billing purposes when that's integrated. We'll also want to know your license information for various reasons. You can publish this on the site, etc. Furthermore, if you're PsyPack, we can then add all your different licenses and all the different states that you're available that you have access to. We'll want to know these things here because this is where we start to set that clinician context. How do you refer to yourself? Excuse me. All right. The next layer of this context piece is where we start to get down into your own specific writing preferences. What we have here is we want to know, how do you refer to your patients? Some people refer to their pediatric population as the child or the client, or they refer to them as first name. But oftentimes when it comes to adult patients, we'll consider referring to them in different ways. And so my preference is Mr. or Mrs. last name. If you have a family system that you like, that you work with, and if you have to refer to them in your documentation, well, then that's how we configure this. We also, if we want to, how do we refer to our referral sources? Because this is a part of how you write as well. We want to make sure that your reports at the end of this process really reflect your style, your voice, etc. In the rare instances where we have to write some confidential information, we can configure how we do this. Another piece of this would be, how do you tend to structure your reports? Bear with me, having some connectivity issues. All right, so the next piece of this then would be the report structure. And we want to know, do you tend to write by domain or do you tend to write by measure? When we consider that, that then starts to create, how do we create this document at the end? How do we start to map the information that we get through this process into this document that comes at the end? All right, so after we've done this, we then roll into, put us in the platform here. Go. You wouldn't believe the amount of screens I have open right now, so sorry. All right, so once you've gotten through this sort of first and second layer of the hierarchy of context, we get into this platform. We love dashboards. Everyone loves dashboards. And this is your personal clinician dashboard. Real quickly, we have how many patients are active, how many reports do you have to do. Of course, this is all dummy information because of the sample account. We have these quick actions where we can get into sending something very, very quickly to a patient if we need to send them very specific information or a form. We can create forms, etc. Your messages from the portal, your patients will communicate to your clinician or the clinical team through their portal. So it's all secure, all done on platform. Therefore, you can extract any of that information if you need to. You can save it to their data. We also have documents, tasks, if you need to make sure you're keeping up on things, which I know is difficult. This is an effort to replace the sticky notes that we all have laying around. And then we just have quick access to any recently added patients. But as I mentioned in the intro to this, I believe that workflow is where the magic happens. And so services in our platform are done in a couple different ways. We know that as assessment psychologists, we don't always just do assessment. Some of us are involved in assessment and therapy. Some of us do some consultation. Some of us do supervision as well. So currently we're servicing both assessment and therapy cases. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a workflow, something that I do very often. I'm going to use adult ADHD assessment as an example. And what we can do here is we're going to put in the F code, the primary F code that roughly resembles the service that you're going to provide. For an ADHD assessment, it makes sense that we would choose ADHD. This is the adult population, and I'm a clinical psychologist. And so we're going to take that information. We're then going to aggregate some of that information and pre-fill a tremendous amount of information for you. What we have is these 4 boxes here. And what this does is it starts to set the context for what this patient who is assigned this service is going to come in for, what they're going to experience, etc. We know that we're going to call this an adult ADHD comprehensive assessment. And we always set the category so we can know to the left and to the right what diagnoses we may want to consider as rule outs along the way in that differential. The reason for referral, all of this is editable. I like to use this one so I can edit that at any time. The referral question, why are they coming in? What is the specific question that we're hoping to answer? Internal and external description are here for you too. An internal description would be if you have an admin or if you have someone who's communicating with patients who's not a clinician. This is how we can communicate about that service inside your organization. And this last piece, this external description, is super important for this reason, that as we're going through this service, we're going to be building marketing materials for you as well. And we'll show you that here in step 6 of this ad service. And this is going to be how you communicate this service to external sources. So on the patient portal, there will be different screens. Again, I'll show you in step 6 here that communicate, this is a service I provide, this is what to expect, and these are some of the timeframes associated with it. So after we get through this piece, it's time to start really thinking about what measures, what the workflow, what the lifespan of this assessment is going to look like for someone. For this, we'll do an initial consultation. Of course, I always do an intake. And then it starts to populate some of the measures that we would expect to give. And so we both have asynchronous, are you sending anything to anyone? And also, what are you doing in the session? And so it already populated the CARS self. I'd like to give the CARS observer as well. So I can pull that up. I know that I can estimate that would take that person about 30 minutes max to do that. And it's an async administration. So the session where they come in and we're actually collecting this information, this is going to be where I'm providing my measure battery. So I'm going to give a WACE. I also like to do the PAI. I know that generally takes about 45 minutes. We do that in the office. And then you get to select like who's providing this. As a user of PsychAssist, you pay by clinician, but all your billing, admin, students, psychometrists, they get companion accounts as well with all the appropriate permissions, etc. So they're not accessing all of the patients you may see, but they're accessing anyone that's been assigned to them. And so if you do have a psychometrist or students, or maybe you have some medical providers in your organization, we can assign certain tasks in this battery to them. Right. I'm also going to make sure that we're testing some performance validity. So I'll throw the Tom in there. And what this does is it starts to identify the data that we're going to be expecting from this patient, as well as when we get into the in-session screens, which I'll show you here in just a moment, it's going to give you specific tools that you need based on these measures. It's always important to put these in order of how you administer them. This is generally how I go. All right. And then if you have any collateral interviews, let's say this is an adult coming in and you'd like to have a conversation with their partner, or there's for a child, perhaps maybe you're doing a school observation. This would be an ad hoc service. This is something you're doing about the patient. You're gathering information from other people who may know about them, but doesn't involve them. And then here we have our feedback session. We know that that's going to be in the main office, and that I would be the one that conducted that. Now, as we move forward, we're going to start thinking about forms, because we know that if a patient is assigned to a specific service, we're going to send specific forms to them. And we know that these are all forms that we have in our library. I think we have about 75 of them. And I know that I'm going to need a general consent. I need a release of information. And then I have just a general developmental history for adults, which is going to focus more on after high school and less on development. In kids, it's going to be the opposite. We could always add additional forms here, because let's say I want to add a HIPAA compliance or privacy notice, perhaps. And also maybe we want to do some telehealth, because we see some people via telehealth. So these are the global forms. These are going to be practice-wide. As we get into the specifics, again, there's multiple layers of this hierarchy. As we get into the specifics, we're going to start thinking about very specific data that we want to collect that's going to help us answer the question that they're coming in for. So because a person's coming in for ADHD, we're going to send them some very specific information or some questionnaires around those symptoms. I also know that perhaps memory is going to be an issue, so why don't I send them some of those? And again, this is a very robust library. You can also add more to them as well. Now, this is where things start to really show the deep intelligence inside PsychAssist. PsychAssist is a really robust, deeply intelligent system. And this is where this comes into play. This is something called the dynamic diagnostic system. So I just identified all of the forms that are going to be sent to a patient who you've assigned this service to. As that patient in their portal, of course, is going to be filling out those questionnaires, our system is watching. And if there is a faint signal of anxiety, or if there's something around sleep, or if there's some educational concerns, the system will either, in that same session, add additional open source screeners, or we can elect to send them the next day. We could also just turn that off. Now, the purpose of this is to gather as much and as comprehensive amount of information prior to you seeing this patient, because I know we've all been there. We've sent the forms, maybe we reviewed them, maybe we didn't. We do an interview and we're like, oopsies, I wish I would have sent something else to get some more information. And as a result of that, this is hoping to solve that problem. Again, the goal of PsychAssist is to make your job easier and produce better patient outcomes. And so if we can get more robust information earlier on, there's less scramble and there's less ambiguity. All right, so we all have to bill for what we do, and whether that's through insurance or whether we're a cash pay practice, we know that we have different schedules of payment. Here's where we start to outline some of the backbone or the skeleton of that billing process. We can determine if we take everything up front, we can everything at the end, just before the report. There's all sorts of ways to do this, and you can create your own custom payment plan here if you take deposits, etc. You're able to identify the general amount that you would be charging for this. This is for cash pay for sure. This is going to be something that you'd want to make sure that you have involved in those conversations preliminarily with your patients. We can identify the codes that we're going to use. We can identify, let's see, I'm going to change this to 130. And then I also know that if I'm using 130, that I'm going to have some additional units of 131. Now, if you're asking for payment by the session, you would then indicate that payment amount per session. But because this is a fixed amount, I'm going to take it all up front. We know that we don't have to fill out by the session. All right, so previously in step one, I mentioned that there are internal descriptions and there are external descriptions. So what we want to do here is we want to think about how we can create some of this information for you. We know that this is the price that we're going to have. It's approximately 5 or 6 sessions. We also have some other information there. What we're going to do next now is we're going to look at the report skeleton. Now, this is going to be where the team gives a lot of extra information for us. What we're going to do now is we're going to, I'm going to throw into this. I want to show you what's going to happen inside the patients or the sessions themselves. That skeleton that I was just briefly mentioning is going to be how we start to aggregate data, because that is a very important piece of the platform. The idea is, how do we get the information from our brains or from the information we have collected from the patient into this document in a way that's going to help us and help the system really create this robust outcome. So I have a patient here, John Smith. He's come in for an adult ADHD session, or assessment rather. And if you look here, we can see that, okay, this is going to be the basic thing that we're doing with our patient. We'll start with the intake. We know that we have forms. I'll show you those in a moment. And so when we're doing our intake, this is the note taking section of the platform. We can record our sessions and transcribe those into our background section. It will create your legal note or your EHR note. We can also obtain information around behavioral observations. So behavioral observations are an important piece to mention. So we have global observations for the lifespan of the assessment. We have global within session observations. And then of course, as we're giving the measures in the assessment session, which I'll show you here next, we're getting really minute, detailed information about a patient's interaction with the measures, because we all know that that's an extra lens we use to help us understand the data better. And if we need that information to understand the patient better, we should also be putting that into the document for them to help understand why we got the results that we got. All right, so we'll get here into the sessions and measures. Because the asynchronous things are clearly not happening in your office, you're usually sending them via an email from one of the publishing portals. You're just able to upload the data regarding those once you get those back. So now we have our assessment session, and this is going to be your co-pilot while you're administering some of the measures with your patient. Remember, I put my measures into the system in that add service moment piece that I just did. This person had a different assessment. The one I showed you was just more of a brief. And so I administer these given this assessment. We know that we're doing them in these orders, and all of these different measures have they're from a different category, so to speak. And so that plays a big role when we're thinking about the observations that we're hoping to obtain during this. As we go through the WAIS, we know we're going to go in this order of subtest, and we can take behavioral observations specifically on that subtest. Here, we're able to put some notes, which will then, of course, come back to you for your clinical thinking. We also have those session-wide observations. So how globally did this individual interact with you? These are the basic things that we would write in an overall behavioral observations write-up. But when we look at this is on a specific subtest. And so if John here is having some trouble with block design, or in similarities, he's having difficulty with some abstract thinking, then we're able to note that. And then of course, that then transfers to our write-up about these measures. Got to show you one thing here, which I believe is important. We can also invalidate things. So if we're going through a subtest and we know that we're going to get data from it, but we really can't trust it, we're able to indicate that in the platform. You know, block design, homie was on his phone the whole time, maybe staring out the window, etc. We know the data is not good. And so we can then indicate to the platform and to this writing process, which I'll get to in a moment, how to then really think about drafting up the narrative around that. We know that in certain areas within the performance measures, such as the WAIS, we have the need for timers, we have the need for stopwatches. When we can do this both at the global session level, let's say you need a 15-minute break between administration of certain subtests, you'd be able to set that there. And then block design itself, you know, maybe you need a stopwatch or you need a timer for some of those subtest administration rules. And therefore, you can have that available to you. And you can have multiple of those happening simultaneously. When we get to our feedback session, similarly to the intake session, we're able to transcribe our session. Now, each of these transcriptions, the intake as well as the feedback, they go and they collect and they're looking for certain information. And so in an intake session, we're going to be taking that conversation between you and the patient, or the patient and their stakeholders that come with them. And we're then going to draft effectively the background section for your document. But remember, we sent all of those forms both at the global and at that diagnostic specific level. And if triggered, the diagnostic system, that differential diagnostic system was sent as well. And when we're looking at the transcript live, as we're doing an intake or a feedback session, we're then comparing notes. And then we're starting to identify and flag any inconsistencies. If someone said they went to Brown High School in their intake information, however, in the actual conversation you're having during your intake session, they said they went to Gray School, well, then you'll be notified about that so you can get some actual context and clear up any of that ambiguity. Because context is everything, and without context, we get less robust data. All right, so we have all of these 3 sessions. We know that we sent some forms to this patient. We can see when they were submitted. We can see if they're in process. We can see if they've started, but they haven't yet completed them. And we can also take a peek at these as well. You can set specific tasks for your patient or for you or for anyone associated with that. If you know you need to call John's wife or you need to check up with their physician about something, these are things that you can add. And you can do this and set priorities. You can also set due dates, etc. So this would then show on your dashboard, as I showed in that very first screen there. Now, this is to keep you focused and to furthermore give you the ability to stay focused on getting things done when they need to get done. And the system can help assist with that. Stakeholders are another interesting piece. Very rarely is it just the patient. Usually it's a physician that needs information, maybe their therapist, maybe if it's a child, we have all these extra stakeholders, whether they're guardians, parents, schools, etc. And with this, we're able to add stakeholders to a patient's file. What this does is we're able to put in the information here regarding their contact information, who they are, and also what role they play. And when we're adding this individual as a stakeholder, it then triggers a release of information to go to the patient. And so once you enter in, Dr. John Smith, we know that in order to get information to Dr. Smith, we're going to need Mr. Smith's permission to do that. And so we then can add that stakeholder. It automates that release of information for you. And then that would then show here for you. Another important thing is the audit. And this is every interaction you have with the patient file, every action that's taken. We're noting that and we're showing. In organizations where there are psychometrists or there are billing individuals, we have that ability to see who did what and when. This is your audit. This is your chain of custody. Heaven forbid you ever have to show information or provide information within the legal system. You want to be able to show what you did when you did it. And this is going to be the ability to do that for you as well. Now, when we look at documents, patients can upload documents through their patient portal. We can also, of course, add the scores that are scored off platform, whether it be through Pearson or PAR, MHS, or any of the others. We're going to get that data, but we need the data in the system. And so what we do is we then upload that information to this patient. But what we have, as I mentioned, we have this like really robust intellectual process that extracts this information. And when we have this information come up, there will be a preview here, but we can also show the information that was extracted from this. We know that this has the patient information in it, that also has some scoring information, the dates of administration. Now, it's always important to make sure we're not missing any particular risk indicators. So we don't want to skim through a document and then miss something that could have been incredibly important. And then it also provides a summary. Furthermore, it extracts the data, and this is the important piece. And so this is your review process as you're going through all of these document uploads. You're going to say, okay, all this information is what we have. We have some overall observations. And then if you added any additional notes, you would be able to do that here as well. And so what this does is it gives you an ability to upload information from your patient. It gives you the ability to, without a lot of friction, extract the important information. Now, this is a good time to mention, every LLM or every AI call that PsychAssist does, it has 2 to 3 prompts associated with it, or 2 or 3 processes associated with it. We're going to actually do the thing, and then it's going to return some results. But before you even see the results, we're running that through a QA. What we're doing is we're really making sure and assuring the quality of that response. And so there are certain sets of rules, and the secondary or tertiary call that we're sending to the LLM is, you did this thing, did you follow our rules? Did you extract the information? Did you make sure that there aren't any clinical indicators, etc.? And therefore, if it fails any one of those secondary or tertiary reviews, we just send it back and do it again. AI is amazing, but it can be inconsistent. And so PsychAssist, as a benefit to the users, has all of these things built into it to ensure that you're getting accurate information. And don't forget, as you're going through this process and reviewing all the information, you still maintain full control. This process is, PsychAssist is doing no thinking for you. It's doing administrative tasks for you. You still maintain full control over all of your decision-making clinically. Now, what we're going to do here. Right. We're going to get into this report wizard. And so where we are in the patient's timeline, they've filled out their forms. We've uploaded all the documents. They've been to the intake session. They have done the assessment. We've uploaded all those scores. They've had their feedback session. And now it's time for us to write the report. And so this takes the place of going to a Google Doc and copying over an old template, changing names, etc. The report wizard is where we start to really aggregate all of that data so we can then produce that output. What we do here is there's a 4-step process we engage. We consider all the data we have because we've been taking a peek at that. But the system is going to say, based on what we see here, these are probably the 5-ish things that we would consider. And so it's going to list those right at the top. There's a full list available here of all the F codes. For this individual, we're going to choose inattentive, ADHD, and we're going to go with GAD as well. Now, when we take this information, when we start to think about the diagnoses that we're going to render for this patient, the system, because PsychAssist has access to all of the data and we've extracted all of the important information from everything that is associated with this patient, we're going to get some information to help us be really critical about thinking how we frame this individual. We're going to provide some supporting evidence. So for ADHD, the supporting evidence based on this patient's information is going to be listed here. We're going to say, what is the convergent? What are some overlapping maybe with some other areas, but nevertheless still might be in line to support this diagnosis? And then we're going to call it. We're going to say, hey, you're picking this diagnosis, but wait a minute, we might want to second guess this. And so this is another opportunity for you to feel really confident about the decisions you're making based on all of the information that we have. Then we start to get to the next step. And this is going to be based on those diagnoses that we selected in step 1. We're going to then think about what are the patterns and what are some insights that the system has because of all of the data and context that we've provided thus far. We're going to show for this individual, we can determine whether we want to include these in our document or to have them laced into the narrative. And we can then think about, based on the information that the system has, if we'd like to do that. Just like in step 1, it's going to show you the main supporting, it's going to show you things that are inconsistent that you may want to consider thinking about. And then of course that is all editable down in the next few steps. Here, this is where I think we've all had this moment where maybe the patient leaves after feedback or maybe even after their testing session, and then they get bad news or they got a performance improvement plan and they're really having a hard time with it. But it is additional information that you can then use to help conceptualize this patient. You're able to put anything in there that's happened since the last time you've seen them. If you know that there's a very specific area in this document that you want to put extra emphasis on, you're able to include that here. And then if there are any additional notes, this would be where you do that. I have a few things that I'll throw in there. So I'm going to put the dates of service in here. Changes since last visit. We're going to throw this. And then specific areas to focus on. Let's throw that in here. All right, and so now we're ready to get to this last step of the wizard. I've done this for some of my patients, and this takes 4 to 5 minutes. And this is where we put that real fine-tooth comb through how we want this document to be then presented. We can determine the length. Do we want to go extra comprehensive, or do we need something really brief? Now, this is a good time to say that PsychAssist will also refactor your documentation. So once you have a finalized report, we're able to then refactor that information for the primary care provider, but it's going to list all the information that they just need. If you need to send something to the school, then we're able to do that for you as well. And it will then extract and take out the information that the school doesn't need to know about, perhaps. We can think about what the audience is that's going to be reading this. This is a clinician-focused one. We can think about our general writing style. I like to write in a strength-based way. We can think about how we're going to present our data. Some people write about, hey, the whisk is this, or the waist is this. This is how we like to do it. Well, then we can include that or not. Excuse me. The last two things rather, is there any particular emphasis that we want to put? Do we want to include an executive summary? And then an opportunity to provide some disclosures. Some people like to say that they're using AI in their documentation, and if that's you, then you have the ability just to click this. Some other people put some cautionary statements in there that this is used for clinical, not forensic reasons. If you're doing a remote assessment, sometimes it's nice to include some of those limitations. And then this would then be something along the line, time-limited findings would be, this is all based on the information we have available to us. Should we get more information, then it may be subject to change, etc. So there are a lot of these disclosure statements that many clinicians use, and this is your time to actually include them or not. Once you have these, after your first one, if this is generally how you write all your reports, you have the ability to save those. So we know we have that our diagnosis is confirmed. We've identified some insights and patterns. We know the additional information, and then this last layer of additional configuration. And what this does, it then puts us into our editor. And this is completely editable. And what you do, and I should note that this is just the text. This is just for you to make sure that what you're writing is accurate. And you have the ability to get in here. You can add information or modify information in several different ways. We have the ability to add information here based on the patient's data, because we keep this like a data lake of all of their information. We have the ability to type it in. We could add anything that we need here. We can also say you want to highlight an area. We have the ability to utilize AI writing. Now, AI is a wonderful writer. I don't want to use it for the thinking piece of it yet, but I do want to use it to help streamline my writing process. And so we're then able to add or modify the text that is produced as a result in any one of these ways. Now let's show you what this produced real quick. I write in the domain. So here's my emotional functioning section. I have an executive functioning section down here, I'm sure. Yes, there it is. Then we also have some of the information around the specific measures that were used, but it's all nested underneath that for you. All right. Data visualization is another important piece. We have all the information inside the system because we've uploaded and extracted all the data, and then we're able to provide this here for you. Now, this is appended to the bottom of your document if that's what you choose to do, but this is your opportunity to get in here and really look at this data and how it's going to be presented in your document. All right, so the last thing, I forget, so sorry. This is where we're able to preview. So I mentioned that the editor is just to make sure your text is right. This is going to be the the preview. So if you were to then just finalize the report, which we're about to do in a moment, this would be what it looked like. All right, so when we finalize things, we want to make sure that we're really making sure we've done our diligence here. So I've reviewed it. I make sure that this all meets my own professional standards and that we take responsibility for it. Therefore, we are good to go. And what it does first, it's going to then get you out of the report editor. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to show you the physician summary. And so oftentimes, at least this is how it works in my practice, I want to get the physician the information as soon as possible to to prevent any delays for the patient care. And so I'm able to view that here. And this is just a brief overview of what we did, why we did it, some of the main information. It's going to then highlight the recommendations as well as diagnosis, of course, as well. Furthermore, we have the ability to do a quick presentation. So let's say you've written this report and you're going to go through it at the feedback session, or maybe you have a follow-up session. You're also able to do this prior to your feedback session if you'd like. And this is going to be your companion as you're going through something. Historically, I have just turned my laptop around. I open up my Google Drive and look at the preview so I can scan through. But there is very little consistency amongst all of that data visualization. This is a way to create something that is easy to interact with. It can show the basic information, the scores, and so it can serve as that instead of pointing to a graph on your laptop from the whisk or the waist printout, it then shows you all of the things. All right. I would like then to get back to the dashboard. And this is getting close to the end of our time. I'm going to start sifting through some of the questions we have here. I'm also going to get back to, bear with me. So many windows. See some questions coming in. That's lovely. All right, back to this. All right, so we just went through the demo. I know I flew through it. I'm super sorry, but there's a lot to go through. This is a really deep system and it has a lot of things built into it. As we think about next steps, if this is something that's interesting to you, I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions. I'm looking through them right now. But I absolutely encourage you to email me. And as we think about getting started with our first cohort or cohort 0, we're going to want to really get into the idea of like, what do we do? How do we do this, Chris? Do we go to a website? Do we whatever? Well, what I want you to do is first, let's think about these questions. There have already been a lot of questions about implementation fee or contract. Like there's no implementation fee and there is no contract length. So we can sign up, we can do what you got to do. And if you decide it's not for you, then there's no hard feelings, but you're not locked into anything. Other people have asked whether or not there's a trial period or can we try before we buy? And at this point, we're not offering that. And this is the reason that it takes a lot of effort to configure the actual layers of hierarchy for your practice and as a clinician. And if I were to allow just a dummy account with dummy information in there without your preferences put into that, your forms, your writing style, etc., I'm afraid that the output would be perhaps repulsive to you. If you want to get into a deeper dive, by all means, just reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through. We can even put some of your things in there as well. Also, I know that there's a lot of clinicians out there that don't have a tremendous assessment caseload. Totally get it. Right now, we're only offering just one program. I'm totally having a loss of words. What we're going to do is we're going to start thinking about how we can service those clinicians in the best way possible. And we already mentioned a bit about what are some of the security and compliance standards. So SOC 1 right now, absolutely moving towards SOC 2. We're about a month into that. So we have about 5 months more to go until we can really prove that we've been able to establish that security long term. All right, so if any specific questions come out that I was unable to get to today, which we're going to jump into just a few of them right here, as we have just about 7 to 8 more minutes, I would love to answer any of the questions that you have. All right, someone asked about what models are we using? Well, we're using several. I mentioned that every call we send to an AI model is going to have several pieces to it. So what we're doing is we're sending primarily the first call, we're going to go to GPT, OpenAI. It's all run on our platform. So nothing leaves our secure server. Everything is processed internally. So this isn't tokenization. This isn't a GPT wrapper. It's all processed in our secure server, which is why we have SOC 1. But then we also have this QA, sort of like checking the work of the first model. And we can't ask the same model to check its work because it always thinks it's right. It wants you to be happy. And so we then send another QA, and we're using Claude for that. And so we have Claude checking OpenAI's work. All right. Score levels in the report, absolutely. There was a few additional screens that I didn't get to in terms of the onboarding process. There, you're able to pick your template, your brand colors. You can then also put your logo wherever you want. We have the ability to have some designs. There are like these designs that we have that are not just your standard and traditional. So there'll be some graphic design elements there. And so, yes, you have control over the coloring to match your branding. Again, when people ask me to share a sample report, what I'm doing is saying, please go look at the last one you wrote, because PsychAssist is going to be able to produce that relatively well. And it's going to furthermore have your branding in mind. All right. Sorry, Rebecca. Yes, that was unclear. So the general pricing per month is $2,000. For the first 10, we're reducing that down by 50% for 6 months. And so that it would be $9.99 for 6 months for the first 10 users. After that, then there would be an increase. And again, many people will say, Chris, why so expensive? Well, this is a deeply intelligent model, and we're spending a lot of, we're sending rather a lot of calls to AI. And what it's doing is it's really keeping us ahead of the curve as it relates to intelligence for you and to make your product the best. All right, we have some questions about more pricing. There's a question about billing. Oh, about super bill. Yes, absolutely. In the platform, I didn't show it, but there's a slide out menu, and one of those options is to produce a super bill. And so you can have one that's general for your practice that you can go in and edit, or you can attach it to a specific service. And so therefore we'll have all of the different service codes. You saw me configure those. It will also have pricing, etc. So yes, we produce super bills for you as a part of the process. So there's a lot of features inside of PsychAssist that refactor the information in so many different ways. We can have this report, we get our comprehensive report, we can refactor it for the school or the physician, or we can write a letter to Timmy about his ADHD at the 5-year-old or first grade reading level. Furthermore, if we have these super bills, we can put all the patient's information in there. We already know how many units of these codes are going to be. We also know when and how we're going to do that. And so absolutely, what we're going to do is getting close to the end of time here. I'm trying to do two things at once. Someone asked, can we personalize the observation options? Right now, that's not an option. What we have for the observations, remember we have the global level, and so that is throughout perhaps the assessment session. And then we have by measure within the subtest. And each measure has its own category. We know that observations we're going to obtain or look for during a WACE are very, very different than what we would look for if someone were in your office filling out a PAI. And so based on the category of the measure that's being used in that moment, we have very specific observations. You can, however, rather than having a customized checkbox, one that's bespoke to you, that side on the right, there was that note section. Feel free to put those in there, and then it is extracted. We can identify that it is a behavioral observation, and then of course it is then tagged as such. All right. There's a question about multiple types of evals. There's also with various contracts or locations. Absolutely. The PsychAssist is already set up to handle this. And so if you have maybe two practices and perhaps the batteries or the workflows are just a little bit different, you can still use PsychAssist for that. You'd be able to modify the location, etc., to have several of those. But furthermore, you would have location A, adult ADHD assessment, location B, ADHD assessment, based on any of the organizational rules. And so if you're affiliated with multiple organizations, there's several ways. You can either have those services indicated separately within your own individual organization, or if multiple organizations are utilizing PsychAssist, in the bottom left, I didn't show you, but there's a little pop out and you'll see all of your different organizations that you're associated with. And so if we have Smith Clinic and Brown Clinic, but Dr. Barnes is working at both of them and both of them are using PsychAssist, well, then therefore I can have access to all my patients that I have permission to see for both of those. All right. Well, I think that concludes our time. I'm so excited that I got to be here today, and it's been a long time coming. And with any questions, please don't hesitate to email me, chris@psychassist.ai. You can message me on the Facebook group that I know we're all a part of. And I very much look forward to seeing you all soon.